Watching the Defectives, Episode 3, The Case of Sarah Atherton. Hello dear viewer. Do come in, wipe your boots on the welcome mat of democracy, and take a seat by the fire. Welcome to the third installment of our long-running investigation Watching the Defectives. With me, your super sleuth detective Barret Homes. The first of our defective defectors is one, Sarah Atherton. Where to begin? The curious case of Wrexham. Our first defective defector was elected Member of Parliament for Wrexham in December of 2019. And unfortunately for Wrexham, she became the first Tory MP to represent the constituency since its creation in 1918. Yes, 101 years of Labour, and then suddenly bang, Conservatism parachutes in like an unwanted party guest who drank all the wine and rearranged the furniture. Somehow, and I say somehow in the same tone one uses when describing alien abductions, she overturned a Labour majority of plus 1,800 and turned it into a Conservative majority of just over 1,100. Wrexham, what have you done? Atherton also became the first female MP for Wrexham and the first female Tory MP elected from a Welsh constituency. So history was made. Unfortunately, so was politics. The resume of respectability. Now, to be fair, and I hate being fair where Tories are concerned, Atherton arrived with a rather impressive CV. She served in the Army Intelligence Corps, trained at Bangor University, became a registered general nurse, studied at Manchester Metropolitan University, where she picked up a BSc in Community Health, and then wandered over to the University of Liverpool for a Master's in Social Work. In short, she is more qualified than most MPs, which, in Westminster, is rather like saying you brought your own cutlery to a food fight. After getting elected, she sat on the Defence Select Committee, supported reports on women in the armed forces, served as vice chair of the APPG for veterans, and worked on several defence-focused parliamentary groups. She even became Minister for Defence People, Veterans and Service Families for a glorious checks notes 5 weeks. Yes, the political equivalent of a free trial subscription. Her achievements, allegedly. In May of 2022, she celebrated Wrexham receiving city status during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After decades of a Labour MP, Wrexham was known as Spice Town, but not anymore. In the last 4 years, we've become a city with a £160 million investment zone, £20 million town fund, £23 million share prosperity fund. We're soon to have the largest trading state in Europe with more jobs than job seekers. We've secured the future of Hightown Barracks, and if Hollywood has boosted our football club. Agree with me that it's this Conservative MP and this Conservative government.
My honourable friend has been an excellent campaigner for Wrexham, putting it on the map after years of decline under the Labour Party, the heart of one of Wales's investment zones, with our plan for towns helping to regenerate the local high street and improve public safety. And I can tell my honourable friend, with such a great campaigner like herself, the next 5 years will only look brighter for Wrexham.
And pushed for it to become the UK City of Culture 2020-25, which is lovely. Because nothing says culture like politicians fighting over branding rights, while the bins remain uncollected. She also served as the Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Secretary of State for Wales, encouraging discussion on sexual abuse cases in the armed forces being handled in civilian courts. Admirable. Then goes and joins Deformed on the 2nd of October 2024, a party whose leadership were happy to try and defend one of their former MPs, James Mac Tiny Cock.
Well, James Murdoch did something really awful a long time ago, over 20 years ago. It's not something he's proud of in any way at all. But, you know, what's done is done. We have the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, we have Christian forgiveness, and let's face it, you know, he hasn't punched somebody to the ground and then hit them 5 times on the ground in the last few weeks, as may have happened to an elected member of another party. I'm not happy about it, but that's the past. And actually, maybe James Murdoch is an example of a young person making some very big mistakes in life, of which the violent incident was one, who now has turned himself around, is happily married, has got child 5, about to be born imminently, has had a good job in the City of London, and is now a Member of Parliament. So maybe there's a story around James Murdoch of genuine rehabilitation. And looking at the state of our prisons, let's hope tens of thousands of people in prison today can turn their lives around too.
Who was convicted of assaulting his girlfriend, who allegedly claimed that her body ran very hard into his boot several times. Honest Gov. Yes. Apparently gravity is now an accomplice. Atherton, it seems, truly knows how to pick winners. The Mac detective moment now. Let us examine the highlights of her time as a Tory MP. There aren't many, so bring a torch. She was criticised for proudly promoting the reopening of a McDonald's in Wrexham while discussing childhood obesity and small independent businesses, which is a bit like opening a swimming pool in a drought and calling it environmentalism. Her defence: it was locally franchised and engaged with the community. Ah yes, nothing says community wellness like a McFlurry and existential regret. The Dover dilemma. Then, in August of 2020, Atherton suggested on Twitter that the army could stop migrants crossing the channel. This was unpopular. You don't say. Apparently, immigration lawyers were unimpressed with the idea of solving asylum policy with bayonets. What exactly did she imagine would happen? Machine gun nests on the White Cliffs of Dover. A no dinghies allowed sign. Perhaps a friendly armoured vehicle, politely asking the migrants to go home. Even by Westminster standards, it was farcical. The final deduction. So what have we learned, dear viewer? Sarah Atherton arrived with intelligence credentials, an oxymoron surely, medical training, social work education, defence committees, minor ministerial flashes of glory, and yet somehow. Her political legacy includes McDonald's PR, military border fantasies, and defecting to a party already busy defending the indefensible. The conclusion is simple: she meets the very low bar required to join deformed. Not excellence, not leadership, just adequate malfunction. And so, another case file slides into the cabinet of political curiosities. Join me, Barret Homes, again soon, when once again we peer through the magnifying glass of democracy and ask, how did this happen? Until then, I am Barret Homes, and these are the Defective Defectives. Hello and do come in. Wipe your feet on the credibility mat. It's been trampled by British politics again. I am Barret Homes. Detective. Super sleuth and professional eyebrow raiser. Today's defective defector is none other than Maria Colette Caulfield, CBE. Yes, Maria is our latest entry into the grand circus of political shape shifting. Former Conservative MP. Former Health Minister. Former everything, really, including human being. And as of September 2025, she has heroically escaped the sinking Tory ship and floated over to deformed UK PLC. Because nothing screams principled politics like changing teams when the scoreboard is on fire. Where to begin? Caulfield was spawned on the 6th of August, 1973, raised in Wandsworth, with a working-class background which she turned her back on, and she came from Irish immigrant parents. Her mum, a nurse, tragically died of breast cancer while Maria was still young. So what did young Maria do? She became a nurse herself. 20 years in the NHS. Cancer research, Royal Sussex, Royal Marston. Actual real-world graft is something only a very small section of the Tory party has ever experienced. So far, respectable. Then politics happened. And like a perfectly healthy cell exposed to Westminster radiation, things began mutating. Local council to national chaos. In 2007, Caulfield won a council seat in Brighton. By one vote, whoopee. Yes. Democracy is so fragile that you could sneeze and change the government. She loses it later by 600 votes, tries Parliament, fails, tries again, and finally lands in Lewes in 2015. Brexit supporter, of course, as it was a prerequisite of any aspiring Tory at the time, and every political CV since 2016 requires a strong opinion on something that nobody had properly explained. She increases her majority, becomes vice chair for women, which is interesting because she opposed abortion reform, buffer zones at clinics, and voted against removing the tampon tax. Nothing says vice chair for women like aggressively misunderstanding the assignment. She resigns, becomes a whip, employs her husband. Totally fine, of course. Nothing suspicious about family payrolls in Parliament. Move along, nothing to see here. Caulfield's bad video editing. In 2020, during COVID, Maria posted a doctored video of Keir Starmer. Not edited for lighting, edited for her reality, making it look like Starmer defended grooming gangs. It came from a far-right account. Downing Street had to tell her, "Please stop accidentally committing misinformation." She apologized, which was about as heartfelt as Spafford's apology for lying, which in politics is Jacob Greasy smug Latin for, "I regret being caught, not for the behavior." Then in 2024, she starts flirting with the 15-minute cities, conspiracy theory. You know, the idea that the government wants to imprison you in your neighborhood like a Deliveroo-based dystopia. Parliament literally issued a guide saying, "Please stop sharing conspiracy theories. There's a nice little Tory." Maria read it, and apparently thought challenge accepted and hold my beer. Her fall from grace, if she indeed had any to begin with. She becomes Minister for Women and Mental Health, which is ironic, because the British Pregnancy Advisory Service immediately protested her appointment over her abortion positions. She even says protesters outside clinics are there to comfort women. Yes, because nothing screams emotional support like strangers with placards judging your uterus. Then comes the 2024 election night. Lewes decides, "Thank you for your service. See you, wouldn't want to be you." And there's the door. She drops from 47.9% to 26.8%, a political bungee jump without the rope. Seat lost. Career wobbling. Future uncertain. And that is when defectors are created.
So Maria Caulfield, she used to be a health minister, saw her many times on Sky News, especially on the morning round, talking about new health policy when the Tories were in power. She has now defected to the Reform UK party. She's no longer an MP, she now works as a nurse. She was always often talked when she was on Sky News about how she was a nurse and had experience of working in the NHS. And clearly she has felt it appropriate to leave the Conservative Party and join Reform UK. Now, she's not, as I say, an MP anymore, so it's not on the same level of defection as we saw yesterday with Danny Kruger, who is obviously a sitting Conservative MP and part of the shadow team from Kemi Badenoch. But nonetheless, this is just a kind of drip effect of Tories jumping ship over to the Reform Party. Now, as we understand it, Maria Caulfield actually joined the Reform UK party a month ago, but has announced it today. So she's actually been in Reform for a month without anyone really knowing. And what is fascinating is this is just another body blow to the Conservative Party at a time when they really cannot afford to lose support, considering their kind of poll numbers at the moment, and obviously that awful result in the general election for their party. The other question is, how much does this become a difficulty for Reform if they continue to be essentially a graveyard for failed Tory ministers, Tory MPs who've lost their seats, Tory MPs who want a way back into Parliament? The danger for Reform is that they end up looking like essentially the Tory party again.
The Great Defection. Fast forward to September of 2025. Maria Caulfield announces she is joining Deformed UK plc. Yes. The political equivalent of saying I didn't change the facts, did. Reform UK anti-establishment, even though they are the establishment. Anti-everything, including critical thought. Pro-anger and very gammon indeed, they appeal to very shouty people. It's where politicians go when they are rebels without a brain. You see, when the Conservatives stop returning your calls, Reform suddenly looks very attractive. It's less a defection, and more a career flotation device. Let's summarise things. A different song but the same old dance. Lost seat public controversies, conspiracy flirting, social media disasters, ideological whiplash, then, suddenly, yes, I've always believed in Deform's values. Of course you have, Maria. Right up until the moment they polled better than your LinkedIn profile. This isn't ideology. It's political musical chairs. And she simply refused to be the one left standing without a party logo. Ah, you've returned. Excellent. The kettle is warm, the facts are like Retroman lukewarm, and Westminster is once again behaving like a particularly theatrical suspect. Tonight's case concerns a man of letters, a philosopher, a speechwriter, a communitarian, a man who defected to Reform UK in September 2025 while declaring, with admirable melodrama, "The Tories are done. The voters aren't coming back." Yes, quite. Our defective defector is one Danny Kruger, Member of Parliament since 2019. Former Tory. Yes. Another one soon. It will be difficult to tell these two parties apart. Danny is now a Deformed UK plc enthusiast. Let us proceed with the customary magnifying glass and the occasional raised eyebrow. The pedigree problem. Kruger was not spawned in the fires of humble obscurity. He was spawned in Westminster in 1974 to Prue Leith and Rain Kruger. Educated at Eton College. Then the University of Edinburgh. Then gained a PhD at the University of Oxford. If Britain were a role-playing game, he selected aristocratic intellectual and all-round ponce on the opening screen. At Edinburgh, he edited a magazine charmingly titled Intercourse, because that is what one does. Yes. The man later lecturing us about moral order once presided over Intercourse. History is delicious, except if it has a Tory aftertaste. The think tank apprentice, after academia, he joined the Centre for Policy Studies because nothing screams grassroots comradeship like a Westminster think tank office. He advised the Conservative Party, wrote speeches, engineered ideas. Then came the great test of political subtlety. In 2005, selected to challenge Tony Blair, the soon-to-be war criminal in Sedgefield. Alas, he was quoted as discussing a plan to introduce a period of creative destruction in the public services. Creative destruction. One does not say this out loud before elections. One whispers it in think tank basements. He withdrew. Many wish his father had done the same and not brought young Danny into the world. Case file note. Our defective defector struggles occasionally with indoor voice, hugging hoodies and rewriting history. In 2006, he became chief speechwriter to David, Piggy Diddler, allegedly, Cameron. Ah, yes. The hug a hoodie era. Compassionate conservatism, strategic empathy. Kruger wrote that speech, and just like Piggy Diddler, allegedly Cameron, he never meant a word of it. Later, he founded a youth crime prevention charity, Only Connect. Noble, earnest. Genuinely commendable, but probably just a tax dodge. He received an MBE in 2017 for tax dodging, charitable services. So far, dear viewer, we observe depth, complexity, seriousness, which makes what happens later all the more theatrical. Brexit, Legatum and the Spaffer affair. He supported Brexit in 2016 as all good. Loyal Spaffer brand Tories did. Joined the Legatum Institute. Then became political secretary to Spaffer Johnson in 2019. This is where the plot acquires the stench of hypocrisy and Tory one rule. During COVID, he defended demonic scummings. He of the failing eyesight that should have gone to Specsavers. Broke mask rules on transport. Apologized. Blamed the photographer. Described masks as absurd. An interesting philosophical development for a communitarian thinker. The community must bind together, but not too tightly around one's nose. The Safe Seat Sermon. In 2019, he won Devizes with 63% of the vote. A sizable majority. But one that he would later, treacherously, desert. In his maiden speech, he calls for a return to Christian values. Those values that every Tory zealot espouses to having but none live up to. Then in 2022, during a debate on abortion after Roe v. Wade's overturning in America, he states he does not agree women have an absolute right to bodily autonomy. How very Christian of him, but one must admire his consistency. He does not dabble in half measures. He later endorses Cruella Graveman in a leadership contest, which, in retrospect, feels less like an endorsement and more like a trailer for future events. The National Conservatism Opera. At the National Conservatism Conference 2023, he declares, "Society rests on marriage between men and women. Radical ideology is sweeping the youth. Modernity resembles a pagan Marxist, narcissistic self-worshipping revolution." Interesting how people who have never studied Marxism like to use the word to make themselves sound intellectual. He later says asylum seekers may pretend to be gay to stay in the UK, and delivers the immortal line, "We can tolerate eccentric ideologues. What we can't tolerate is large numbers of people who hate the country that they live in."
Is Britain and is civilization itself, Western civilization, really rather in peril right now?
Well, I think a society that doesn't share values, in which significant numbers, we can always tolerate a few lunatics as long as they don't get violent. This country hosted Karl Marx for some years, and ultimately it didn't do us any harm. Did other countries a lot of harm?
Well, indeed.
So we can tolerate eccentric ideologues. What we can't tolerate is large numbers of people who hate the country that they live in.
A very wise man once told me that when politicians begin defining who hates the country, they are usually auditioning for a new audience. Covenant or Convenience. In 2023, he publishes Covenant, a book arguing liberalism's social contract should be replaced with a moral covenant rooted in duty, hierarchy, and tradition. He distinguishes between the order as tradition, community, transcendence, the idea self-creation, autonomy, modern liberalism. It is a deeply serious thesis, which makes his 2025 announcement in the Times all the more dramatic. "I'm leaving because I think the party is over." The party is over. One almost expects balloons to fall from the Commons ceiling. The defection, 15th of September 2025. Kruger defects to deformed UK plc. The philosopher of Covenant abandons the Conservative Party for a political insurgency built on populist grievance and theatrical outrage. Curious. If society is a covenant rooted in mutual obligation, is party loyalty not part of that bond? Or does covenant apply only downward, never sideways? You see, my dear viewer, defection is rarely about ideas. It is about trajectories and following trends. His majority in 2024 fell dramatically to 35.7%. The Conservative Party faltered nationally. Popularity in the toilet, deformed, surged. And suddenly the communitarian covenant discovered a new congregation, a recognized pattern. Let us summarize: Eton, tick; Oxford, tick; think tanks, tick; speech writing, tick; Brexit, tick; moral traditionalism, tick; culture wars, tick; conservative collapse, tick; Deforman's arrival, tick. One detects not betrayal, but migration. Like a philosopher following the warmer intellectual climate, except this climate includes talk radio and culture war podcasts. The deduction: Danny Kruger is not unserious. He is not unserious at all. He is a stinker, a thinker. But thinkers sometimes become convinced they are prophets, and prophets require platforms. If the Conservative Party no longer provided the stage for the order vs. the idea, Deformed UK plc certainly will. He claims the Tories are done. But perhaps what he meant was, the Tories no longer sound like me. A subtle distinction. Communitarianism meets Farage fake populism. Kruger describes himself as a communitarian, a believer in place, family, and localism. Yet Reform UK thrives on national grievance and broad brush antagonism. A covenant requires patience. Populism requires volume. One suspects this will be educational. Lots of failed Tories will soon run into the brick wall known as reality. Is the case closed? So what is this case truly about? Not ideology, not betrayal, not even ambition. It is about political gravity. When a party weakens, its most restless minds seek stronger fields. The grass looks greener on the other side. Kruger did not defect in 2020, nor 2021, or even 2022. He defected when the Conservatives looked terminal, which suggests not a crisis of belief, but a crisis of viability and a big dollop of self-preservation. Politics, dear viewer, is not chess. It is musical chairs played on the Titanic. And Danny aka Freddy Krueger, philosopher MBE, communitarian, has simply jumped in the one of the few remaining lifeboats only to wash up on the deformed UK plc island. Will Reform UK be his covenant, or merely his next chapter? In British politics, the game is never about who believes. It is who moves first when belief becomes inconvenient. Will Danny, aka Freddy Krueger, fit into the deformed UK plc mould? Of course he will, as Farage rewards treachery. His whole brand is based on it. If you would like more of my diligent sleuthing into these repulsive reprobates that are jumping into the failed Tory recycling bin, calling itself deformed, then follow these instructions. You can stroke them, caress them, tickle them, or even press them. It's entirely up to you what you do with the like and Subbscribble buttons in the privacy of your own home. Just do it.